Welcome to another Rialto Channel podcast. I'm Francesca Rudkin, and I'm thrilled today to be talking to New Zealand filmmaker Tim Van Dammen. Damon or Demon?
Dammen.
Dammen. Tim
Yeah,
Van Dammen. Let's get that right, shall we, Tim? Hey,
yeah.
lovely to talk to you.
And you?
So we're here to talk about the crime thriller/comedy Mega Time Squad, which is screening on Rialto Channel in January on the 11th. Let the listeners know what they're in for, Tim.
Well, it's a time travel comedy sci-fi crime movie set in Thames about a guy who accidentally steals a time travel bracelet and tries to use it to steal some money, but he completely buggers it all up and ends up multiplying himself over and over. And by the time he gets the money, he doesn't want to share it with all the other multiples of himself, so he tries to rip himself off and get away with the money.
It's a wonderful, extraordinary combination of kind of genres and locations and things. Could you not commit to one genre, or did it kind of just, was this always what you imagined it to be?
It's sort of, I wrote it in so many different forms. Originally, I wrote it as a straight sort of sci-fi crime movie, where, and it was a bit darker in tone, and it had a lot more characters, and it was more about the gangs and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, hang on, this is about a guy like messing up time travel. I was like, this is sort of a silly idea. This should be fun and funny. So I rewrote it again, just with that in mind. And I was living in Thames at the time, and I sort of, just drew on the sort of cadence of the people around me and the sort of the slang and the sayings that everybody was talking about. And I sort of just livened it up a bit and made it a bit more fun. And it sort of evolved like that.
Are you from Thames, or were you just living there for a while?
I've lived there on and off. Like, my family's moved around a lot, and I had come back from overseas, and I'd gone back to live in Thames where my parents were living at the time. And I was working at the supermarket there and writing this at the same time. So, and my sister was born there. And I lived in Thames and Rotorua and Hamilton, and I moved to Auckland when I was about 17, and I've stayed here ever since, except for my short return to Thames. But yeah, there's just something. We always tend to end up back down there.
What did you most want to capture about Thames in the film?
I just feel like it's the very down to earth approach to things that could be perceived to be quite extreme circumstances, So for me, a lot of the flavor of the movie comes from, there's time travel and there's demons and there's this kind of stuff, and the reaction to it is, oh yeah, well, how we should probably sort that out. Just very sort of a low.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a certain sort of like lack of melodrama around everything, which I felt was quite sort of unique, and it had a lot of room for, to make some cool jokes.
Absolutely, you get a real sense of the place. It's a bit like another character in the film in a way. What did the people of Thames think of the movie? Did you screen it for them?
Yeah, we screened it specifically down at the Thames Theatre down there. Yeah, we got a really good response. People tend to love it, so it's very much like capturing the cadence and the language and the way, because I was working down there at the butchery and the supermarket, and just wanted to sort of, like, the way we all talk to each other is the way I wrote the dialogue. And I was thinking when I wrote it, I thought, well, I wonder if I could write dialogue that nobody would understand unless they were from New Zealand. And so that was sort of like the aspiration, but you can't achieve it because we don't have that much of a unique dialect. But a lot of the sayings and a lot of the way people speak and stuff is designed to try and capture that sort of vibe that I had when I was living in Thames, yeah. And it's a lot of way, my family speaks like that.
So tell me though, because of course the film. Sorry to interrupt him, but the film had its premiere in New Zealand at the New Zealand International Film Festival, which is absolutely fantastic, very impressive. But since then, it's also done some travelling, and I'm curious to know how the film has been received overseas.
Well, it actually premiered at Fantasia in Montreal, which is
that was its first, right, the world's premiere.
Yeah, that's the festival that I actually wrote it for, because some of my favourite filmmakers have sort of built their careers through Fantasia, like Takashi Miike and people like this. And so when I was actually deciding what to make a film about, I thought, well, I really want to make something for the genre circuit, which is, Fright Fest, Fantasia, Fantastic Fest, and they have a big one in Germany called Fantastic Film Festival. Because these festivals are more like people who love movies go there and they party and they watch movies. It's quite a different experience than the sort of more market-based festivals where it's very like, talk to my agent, man. Yeah, who's in it? Yeah. It's much more of a fun environment. It's the kind of environment that I was used to growing up, going to all the things that Ant Timpson put on, like his 24-hour marathons and his fantastic stuff. And so for me, that was like the ideal situation. So, and most of those festivals are sort of populated with horror films. And I thought, well, I don't really want to make a horror film that just blends in with the rest or all these kinds of things. I want to do something that can play there, but will stand out and be unique, and a bit of a wild card for the programmers. So I sort of took a punt on that, and then when I sent it over to them, they loved it and they screened it. So it was at Fantasia. It was the fastest film to ever sell out at their festival in the history of the festival.
Wow.
It sold out in less than 20 minutes. And then it went to, and then it just started to get invited everywhere. So it screened at, I don't know how many festivals it screened at, but a huge number of them. And so I was touring with that. I went over to Montreal, and then from there I went through to London, and then back to New Zealand, and then to Australia, and then through the US some more. It went all over the place. So, and in amongst there was the New Zealand premiere, which was really fun as well. So I was pretty tired by the end of it.
Well, you think that when you finish a film, that's sort of that's such a huge effort to actually complete the film, but you're only really halfway through the whole process, right. Aren't you? Yeah. It just goes on and on. So when it was travelling, so obviously the sense of humour, it didn't matter that it was, as you say, it had this very sort of New Zealand cadence to it and sense of humour and things. It really appealed to a broad audience, which is great.
Yeah, it did, and it depended on where. Like so the Canadians loved it. It depends on sort of, I suppose, the sensitivity of the audience. Like the British loved it. The Canadians loved it. The Americans, it's got a lot of 4-letter words in it, and the Americans were found that harder to swallow than everybody else. But it's the place that it's done really well in terms of just organically finding its audience and making a lot of sales, and has been Germany, which is quite. Yeah, it's really popular in Germany, which is something that I wouldn't have seen coming. It's been translated into German. They've got the soundtracks all over the place, and they've done all kinds of different forms of release even on VHS tape style things. And when you order the DVD, it comes with the time travel bracelet and all this kind of weird stuff that they've done over there.
It sounds like it's going to become a little cult classic, Tim.
Yeah, well, it's found its way around, which is kind of cool, and it does have a little sort of underground following.
Hey, tell me about Anton Tennant, because he plays John, and he doesn't just play one John, he plays multiple Johns, and he does such a convincing job of being in the room with himself over and over again, doesn't he?
That's right, and Anton's awesome. I worked with him on Romeo and Juliet, and when I was thinking about this movie, before I even started writing it, I met up with Anton and I said, I'm going to write a movie for you. Would you be keen to be in it? Because I don't want to write it with you in mind, and then you're like, oh, no. So he was like, so I talked to him, right up front, and then I sort of wrote it with him in mind the whole time, and we shot a lot of, test bits and pieces just on my phone and comping together the different shots to see how it would feel with him talking to essentially just nobody sitting beside him, and then him trying to react off nobody, and he just had everything just nailed, and he played it perfectly, and with a slight sort of sense of increasing frustration with each additional copy of himself that he was playing, and I think it comes across really well, and he did an incredible job.
So he didn't even have stand-ins working with him.
Occasionally we did have a stand-in, but the majority of the time we did not.
That's pretty impressive, because I was watching quite closely, like if there was one sitting and one standing and things like that, and eye lines and everything are spot on.
Yeah, no, he's good. It's one of these things, because I did all the effects work, the majority of it, and so I was like, I need it to be clean. I can't have someone else standing there, because then I can't really paint them out and then put him in and all this kind of stuff. So it was about sort of managing that, but the thing with Anton is that he doesn't have any like memory, he's really onto it, and so he's like, I was here and I was doing this, and the other one was here, and he remembers all the flow of the dialogue, and I would read the other versions of himself off camera, and we'd try and keep to a similar sort of rhythm to the scene once we'd sort of found a good way to do it, and he would play each of them bit by bit and nail it.
Oh, well, that's brilliant that not only, can he act superbly, but he can also do continuity for you.
That's right, yeah, no, and oftentimes I'd be like, weren't you over? And he's like, no, I was here. And I was like, okay. No, he's very onto it.
He didn't charge you for every extra John he had to play, did he?
Well, he could have done. No, I mean, this was made for very, very little money. This was I'd saved up for a long time to be able to afford to do this, and so there was almost the budget was very, very, very low, and so we were, most of us were just doing it for the love of it.
It is rude to ask about money, but I was curious about budget. Maybe is budget on your mind when you're writing a film?
Well, when you're paying for it, with my approach, then yes, because I knew everything. What I was able to do was constantly in my mind. So when I was writing, it's like, okay, I can do time travel. How can I do that? Because I will do all the effects. I'll do all this kind of stuff. And what can I actually pull off myself? And then how can I recruit, all my friends and people that I've worked with for years to work on it, and how do we manage getting people paid. So everyone was paid, but they were paid everyone was paid the same amount, and they were paid very minimal amount, just as a token thing with a deferred fee if the thing went on to make any money. So it was and I did all the legals myself, and I did everything, which was like a necessary thing, but it did cause a bunch of headaches further down the track, which we eventually got through. But it's just one of those things that's a necessary thing if you want to make a movie and you want to make it, your way. Then every way you make a movie has its own compromises. This way had sort of financial compromises, and it just meant that the post-production process took a lot longer and all that kind of stuff too.
So, Tim, what is next on the cards?
Well, I have a film here in New Zealand called The Rapture, which is should go into production next year. That's been funded. That's got an American company attached to it and a New Zealand company attached to it, which is going to be a lot of fun. It's sort of like if Edward Scissorhands ushered in the apocalypse in Greymouth.
Excellent.
So it's very funny and it's very fun, and it's they try and it's Greymouth is trying to boost its tourism and everything goes wrong. And And then I'm just working on some stuff in the US because off the back of this, I was signed to a big agency over there, and so I've been working on all kinds of US productions, mostly writing at the moment, but we're looking at getting my first sort of American studio film going next year as well. So,
well, that is really exciting. Exciting times.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting, and it's just working like crazy. So it's super fun. I love it.
Well, we're absolutely thrilled to be playing Mega Time Squad on January the 11th on Rialto Channel. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Francesca.